After we got back together, I changed all the bad habits Pablo hated. I stopped checking on him constantly, stopped getting jealous for no reason, stopped nitpicking, even when I found a lipstick in the passenger seat that wasn't mine. I thoughtfully put it back in place for him, but Pablo's face darkened, and he suddenly slammed on the brakes. Chapter 1. Pablo had sharp brow bones, deep features, and the oppressive aura of someone always in charge. Yet now he pinched the bridge of his nose, looking exhausted. This lipstick was left by Juliet. The dinner went too late last night. She helped me drink on my behalf. She couldn't drive, so I gave her a ride. He looked at me and did something he always disdained doing, explaining, "I've told you countless times. It's only because she's my uncle's daughter that I have to look after her a bit. Past, present, or future, I have nothing going on with her." Seeing me silent, his always composed expression cracked for the first time, revealing helplessness I had never seen on his face. "What will it take for you to believe me?" I said calmly. "Nothing. I believe you, and I'm not angry." It was like punching cotton. Pablo's expression turned blank for a moment. "Then why haven't you said a word the whole way?" I looked at my watch, calculated the time to the airport, and brushed it off. "You said before you didn't like hearing useless information. You're almost late for work. Just drop me off at this intersection." Focused entirely on the road, I completely missed the momentary darkening of Pablo's expression. "You always get off at the next traffic light. We're still 2 kilometers away from your company." I hadn't expected that, and was forced to meet Pablo's scrutinizing gaze. "It's early morning. If you're not going to the office, then where are you going?" Seeing the hesitation deepening in Pablo's eyes. Ding! His exclusive ringtone, belonging to Juliet. Pablo's sharp gaze tightened, then flickered away. He said, "Guilty. It's a work call. I need to take it." He immediately tossed aside the suspicion he had toward me and unlocked the car doors. "Then you should get off here." I nodded, quickly unbuckled my seatbelt. But he stopped me. "Don't be so careless. Watch where you're walking." His voice lowered behind me, carrying a coaxing softness. "That restaurant you always wanted to try, I booked it. I promised you before. I'll never miss another anniversary again. Happy 7th anniversary, Jane. See you tonight." My hand on the car door paused. The last anniversary. He abandoned me for Juliet. Back then it hurt so much. Yet now thinking of it, I felt nothing at all. "Go answer the call." I opened my mouth and said softly, "Don't keep her waiting. After all, Juliet can't be kept waiting, and my plane can't wait either. As for anniversaries, this year, next year, every year, I'm going to miss them all." Chapter 2. I finally caught the plane. After sitting down, I felt a bit dizzy because I hadn't had time for breakfast. I reached into my pocket out of habit, and as expected, found 3 chocolates. Ever since I fainted from low blood sugar a long time ago, Pablo had made a habit of quietly slipping a few chocolates into my pocket every day. The sweetness melted on my tongue, and the dizziness quickly eased. But then, a deep lingering bitterness rose up afterward. 7 years together. How did Pablo and I end up like this? At first, I truly believed Juliet was just what he said, someone hired because of his uncle's connections. Someone he had to bring into the company out of obligation, which was why Pablo had to keep our relationship strictly separate at work, and why he had to give her special treatment. The head of our department made things difficult for me several times, and anyone who so much as spoke to Juliet without enough respect would be fired. Behind the scenes, everyone gave Juliet a nickname, and in front of me, the secret girlfriend Pablo kept hidden, they called her the boss's future wife. I forced myself to understand his difficulties, but that special treatment followed us home. Pablo would drop everything because of her calls, leaving me again and again to go to her. The violent fight erupted one night. I saw a picture in our colleagues' private group chat. It showed Pablo, who claimed he was working overtime, watching a midnight movie with Juliet. Coincidentally, it was the exact movie I had begged him many times to watch with me, only to be ruthlessly rejected. I had tugged on his sleeve and pleaded, "Everyone goes with the person they love to watch the movie they love. Let's go too, okay?" Pablo hadn't even bothered to lift his eyelids as he refused. Watching this kind of brainless romance film is a waste of life. Yet in that photo, he looked elegant, smiling warmly. Not a trace of impatience. Messages in the chat scrolled by rapidly, soon blurring before my eyes. When Pablo came home, I asked flatly, without any emotion in my voice, "How was the romance film?" A flicker of surprise seemed to pass through his eyes. Or maybe I imagined it, because he remained utterly unmoved, expressionless. "You followed me?" My heart felt like it was smothered under a soaked, heavy towel, so suffocating I couldn't breathe. "Follow you? Why would I need to? Your sweet little photos with her were already flooding our company group chat." My chest heaved uncontrollably. "Pablo, if you want to break up, just say it. You don't need to lie to me like this." Pablo didn't even change expression, calm like an outsider. "If you can't even give me the most basic trust, then I have nothing to say. Jane, I've been working all day. I don't have the energy to argue with you. No guilt, no explanation, compared to my pathetic state." He was so composed. He even remembered to place the paper bag he was holding gently on the table. The bold title on the paper bag, "Romance Film," was like an icy blade stabbing straight into my heart. The emotions I had been repressing for so long surged up all at once, huge and crushing. Finally, they snapped my last thread of sanity. I grabbed the paper bag in a breakdown and slammed it onto the floor to vent my anger. It wasn't sealed. Everything inside rolled out in all directions, making a few dull sounds on the ground. I didn't even look at them, only stared at Pablo with reddened eyes. We locked eyes, almost like we were in a standoff. After a while, he slammed the door and left. I stood frozen like a statue, until something rolled to my feet. I looked down, stunned. It was chocolate, round, handmade chocolate scattered all over the floor. Chapter 3. In the end, I softened. I wanted to talk things through with him properly, but for 3 whole days, Pablo neither answered my calls nor came home. Swallowing my grievances, I sent him a message. I was wrong to lose my temper without talking first. But the fact remains, you said you were working overtime. Yet you went to watch a movie with her. Tonight is our 6th anniversary. I'll wait for you at home. Let's sit down and talk, okay? But I waited from daylight to nightfall, and he still didn't come back. Near 11 o'clock, I made up my mind and went to the company to find him. On the way, I ran into the department head Pablo had fired because of Juliet. He dragged me toward a dark corner. Damn it. I didn't dare touch the boss's woman. But you? I can touch you just fine. Each call I made to Pablo's private number went unanswered, and each unanswered ring became a terrified, hopeless plea for help. If a passerby hadn't come by and scared him off, the injuries I suffered wouldn't have stopped at bruises and a swollen face. When my phone rang suddenly, I screamed like a frightened bird struck by an arrow. The moment I saw the name on the screen, the composure I'd been forcing all night collapsed instantly. I burst into tears, almost like someone who had narrowly escaped death. Hello? Juliet's soft, sweet, girlish voice sounded. Pablo's in the shower. I saw you called several times. May I ask who you are, and what you need? My throat felt instantly stuffed with burning charcoal. The tender flesh inside felt scorched, blistered, charred. It hurt so badly I wanted to carve out my own vocal cords. Hanging up, a task so simple, felt like it drained the last of my strength. Utterly humiliated, I limped my way to the police station to file a report. By the time everything ended, the clock pointed to 0:01 of the next day. And finally, I received a call from Pablo. His tone was still just as condescending as ever. "So, do you realize you were wrong?" In that instant, I understood he had done it on purpose. Those unanswered calls I made on our anniversary, they were his punishment for my lack of trust. Tears slid down my swollen cheeks. Burning like acid poured onto open wounds. When I spoke, my voice rasped like a broken bellows. I said, "Pablo, let's break up." There was only a 1-second pause on the other end. Then Pablo gave a cold laugh. "Fine, but don't regret it." He hung up without hesitation, agreeing to break up with me without the slightest reluctance. Chapter 4. In the beginning, I just had trouble falling asleep. I couldn't help tossing and turning, replaying every detail of our relationship. I was terrified that I had misjudged him, that I had condemned him too harshly. I started reading through our old chat logs again and again, but the more I read, the sadder I felt. The more I read, the more resentment grew. I began to hate Pablo. 6 years, 6 whole years. I hated how easily he threw me away, as casually as tossing out trash. At 4 in the morning, in misery, I deleted all his accounts. Then I got up and angrily gathered everything of his, stuffed it all into a huge trash bag and hurled it into the dumpster downstairs. After doing all that, I thought I'd feel relieved, but it was like killing a mosquito that had tortured me, only to realize the blood splattering out belonged to me. I went to work on time, acting as though nothing had happened, but only I knew a huge piece had been carved out of my heart. That piece used to hold Pablo, until it began to rot, and to survive, I had to cut that rotten flesh out myself. But I forgot, when the wound is that large, a person can't survive either. My emotions surged back violently the moment I saw him at the company's all-hands meeting. Pablo remained calm, steady, and self-possessed. He even seemed more spirited than before, as if losing me hadn't affected him at all. Juliet sneaked looks at him, face faintly flushed, thinking no one noticed. I began to lose sleep night after night, unable to keep any food down. Pablo didn't use social media, so I went crazy checking Juliet's accounts instead, analyzing every caption, every post related to Pablo, until the day I fainted at work from low blood sugar and was taken to the hospital. Pablo lowered himself to come see me. It was the 29th day since our breakup. He casually rolled the matching couple ring we once wore between his fingers. "Jane, you've lost weight." My eyes were empty as I opened my mouth. "I'm sorry." Pablo smiled, satisfied, triumphant, and just like that, we got back together. Chapter 5. There's an old saying, short pain is better than long pain. But not everyone fits that principle. For people with weak willpower, the best method is a calm, gradual withdrawal. Leave the person exactly where they were in your life, but slowly stop expecting anything from them. Like boiling a frog in warm water, the process isn't too hard, and the ending isn't too painful. In the beginning, when I pretended to be magnanimous, my heart still ached faintly, and Pablo seemed very satisfied. Otherwise, he wouldn't curl his lips, pat my head like I was some small pet. "Jane, you've grown up." After half a year of being back together, my self-rescue method finally started working. I truly began to slowly become the version of me Pablo had always wanted. He didn't come home all night. I no longer checked up on him. Anything involving Juliet? I no longer asked. By the time I realized it, that rotten piece of my heart had already fallen off on its own. Like an overripe fruit dropping from a branch, I froze for a moment, then laughed. Immediately, I sent my resume to a company in France. They had offered me a job before, but back then, I stayed for Pablo. Luckily, I got the offer. My flight was booked for half a month later, and I had no plans to tell Pablo. After all, to him, our relationship had always been something optional. The more understanding and mature I became, the more displeased Pablo seemed. I thought I was imagining it, and continued working overtime as usual. When I got home and was about to shower, he called me back. Pablo slowly lifted his eyelids. "Nothing you want to say to me lately?" I yawned, confused, and shook my head. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." His tone was flat. "Go." But soon, I realized he was angry. My toes curled as I was forced to endure his increasingly rough advances. Pablo held me from behind, his hot breath brushing my neck. His murmurs were soft as feathers, but his movements were harsh, like interrogating a prisoner on death row. "Juliet made things hard for you at work, kept you working overtime. Why didn't you tell me?" My lower abdomen nearly cramped, and I truly couldn't understand what he was angry about. But I could only beg the very person who caused the situation. Work is work. Private life is private. I behaved. Back then, my department head, the one who later turned out to be a creep, constantly targeted me. The worst time, he pushed a huge blame onto me. Pablo publicly scolded me in a meeting with hundreds of people. Even a pig wouldn't make such a stupid mistake. At home, I held back my grievance. "Emails can prove everything. Why wouldn't you let me explain at the meeting?" Pablo was expressionless, exactly the same as he was at work. Work is work. Private life is private. "Jane, I only look at results." At the company, I'm your boss, not your boyfriend. I won't defend you. But not even 2 days later, my supervisor was fired. The reason? He had spoken to Juliet with a disrespectful tone. I worked hard, had the best performance. Everyone thought I'd get promoted after the supervisor left. But Juliet, who hadn't even finished her probation, was suddenly promoted by Pablo. She took my supervisor's place. She became my boss. Now that I had put myself in the right place, stopped reacting, and kept work separate from private feelings, Pablo suddenly froze mid-movement and flipped me over. The lights were too bright. I covered my eyes, and tears slipped out from the corners involuntarily. Pablo insisted on prying my hand away. I tried to resist, but I was too drained. What are you doing? He still pulled my hand away. Pablo stared straight into my eyes, his tone stubborn. You used to always look into my eyes. I had no idea what had gotten into him. I could only meet his gaze with thin patience. For a moment, something anxious flashed in Pablo's eyes. Then, out of nowhere, he panicked slightly and covered my eyes with his hand. Lowering his head, he kissed me, calling my name again and again. Jane. Jane. Chapter 6. The next day, Pablo suddenly asked Juliet to give a work report. All the work in that section had been done by me, and Juliet stuttered, unable to say anything at all. If you don't even understand your own job responsibilities, Pablo said expressionlessly, you don't need to sit in that position anymore. Everyone in the meeting room fell utterly silent, barely daring to breathe. Juliet covered her mouth and ran out crying. After the meeting, the break room on our floor was buzzing with excitement. Wow, the boss looked so mad today. You think the boss's future wife is about to be dethroned? People chattered noisily. While I was making instant coffee, someone called out to me, Jane, why aren't you saying anything? If you ask me, you're really strong. Pablo scolded you so harshly back then, and you didn't even cry. Honestly, I had zero interest in getting involved in anything between the two of them, but in a situation where everyone was gossiping about the boss, silence could be seen as betrayal and turn you into a target. So I joked lightly, I'm just a miserable worker bee. How could I compare myself to the boss's lady? Couples fight at the head of the bed and make up at the foot of the bed. Love and conflict, that's the ultimate workplace power combo. Hey, why are you poking me? Stop messing around. I lowered my head, steadied my ceramic cup, and added, they're a perfect match. Honestly, I'm starting to ship them myself. Only after speaking did I notice the strange silence in the break room. I looked up and met Pablo's face, cold as a frozen lake, under everyone's pitying gazes. Pablo glared and summoned me to the top floor. The moment I entered, he hugged me tightly from behind. I jumped in shock. Pablo was usually very careful about these things. To keep our relationship secret, he would force me to get out 2 traffic lights early every morning. But now the office door was open, and he had 7 assistants who could walk in at any moment. I quickly pushed him away with both hands and feet. Someone might come. Pablo started staring into my eyes again, as if he had to dig something out from the bottom of them. After a while, he finally lowered his suspended hand. Jane, I really don't have anything with Juliet. In the past. Forget it. You can stay mad inside if you want. From now on, I'll prove it with my actions. I froze for a moment. The promise I couldn't get even when I cried and fought before the breakup, I suddenly received for no reason at all. But now, my flight was in 7 days. I didn't want anything anymore. Pablo began acting like a different person. He suddenly reported everything to me. Even though I didn't care anymore, he was even more obsessed with forcing me to look into his eyes during sex. But every time I looked, he would suddenly cover my eyes again. It felt like a derailed train suddenly pulled back onto the right track. The ticking clock, our relationship, it all seemed to rewind to the time before Juliet ever appeared. For a moment, I wondered if maybe he hadn't been completely indifferent after all. I decided the breakup should be said to him face to face. When I bought the ticket, I hadn't noticed. My departure date was our 7th anniversary, and tomorrow would be our 7th anniversary. I looked at the photo Pablo sent, a report of where he was during a business dinner. I made up my mind to talk to him tonight, but then I saw Pablo kissing Juliet. Summer night breeze, stars above, Every scene was identical to that night 7 years ago, when we confirmed our relationship. Except back then, the person in Pablo's arms was me, and now it was Juliet. Juliet's peach blossom eyes shimmered beautifully. Her lipstick color was lovely too. She looked at me, and in her eyes, what flickered was unmistakably pride and provocation. I couldn't help but let out a self-mocking smile, and my heart, like completely still dead water, finally, became utterly unmoved. Chapter 7. Pablo had been restless these past few days, perhaps because Jane was becoming a little too well-behaved. In the past, when there was still a month or two before their anniversary, she would already be chattering about how she wanted to celebrate. But today was their 7th anniversary. If he hadn't brought it up himself in the car that morning, she seemed to have completely forgotten. Pablo frowned, lowered his eyes, and looked at his silent phone. A strange sense of losing control crawled up his spine like a swarm of ants, as if something invisible was slipping away where he couldn't see it. He couldn't grasp it, yet he had to do something to calm himself. So once again, he immediately sent Jane a status update. "I'm handling something important over here. Be good. Meet me at the Sunset Restaurant at 18:30. Just then, a syrupy sweet female voice called out, "Pablo." Pablo lifted his eyes in annoyance. He saw Juliet's face, and next to her, Juliet's father. Behind them, an aide pushed Paul's wheelchair. Paul's brows were permanently furrowed into a deep crease. "We'll finish talking right around dinner time, so I invited your future in-laws to eat together." Juliet's father put on the airs of an elder, echoing Paul. "It's been delayed for a whole year. It's time to finalize you two kids' wedding date. Your grandfather's health isn't good. What did you call him here for? Hurry up, finish talking, and let's all go eat." Juliet shyly played along, nodding. "Great." Pablo's lips curled into a cruel arc, with not even a hint of a smile in his eyes. "I was planning to meet him tomorrow anyway." Juliet's father had just begun to grin, but the smile froze at the next sentence. "Perfect. We can discuss the land parcel in the development zone while we're all here." "Development zone? What development zone?" Juliet's father's eyes nearly popped out. Paul's expression also changed drastically. Only Juliet stayed sweetly oblivious. "Daddy, it's the land in North City." Pablo said it was urgent. "Last night." Juliet's cheeks turned pink as she recalled something. "Anyway, last night, I used your official seal to stamp the documents for him." With every word she spoke, the two old men's faces turned a shade paler. Within just a few sentences, Paul fainted from anger. Juliet's father, agitated and furious, was dragged out by security. Only Juliet remained rooted in place like a puppet with its strings cut. She finally seemed to realize her situation. Her eyes reddened. "So you were using me all along? Your kindness toward me was fake, just to earn my trust so you could go after my dad? I don't understand business stuff, but I never wronged you. I even waited for you to break up with your girlfriend even though I knew she existed. How could you treat me like this?" Naively, Juliet had allowed her father to pressure Pablo with his shares, trying to force a marriage between them. Now that Pablo had reclaimed the shares and no longer had to be controlled by anyone, he didn't bother sparing her another expression. His cold voice didn't even waver. "Never wronged me? If it weren't for your privileged position, how else would you have sat in that role?" Juliet stared at him as if she were seeing him for the first time. "Oh." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "So you're defending your girlfriend Jane now?" Pablo hadn't expected her to know Jane was his girlfriend. His brows lowered slightly. Juliet caught that tiny shift instantly. So Jane, that name, was the only weak spot this man had. Her eyes were red to the point of bleeding. Pablo wanted to use her like a sticky note, toss her aside after use, but she was determined to act like superglue, rip a layer of skin off him if she had to. Jane submitted her resignation this morning. "She's one level below me. Employees under level 4 don't need your approval to resign. You probably didn't know, so I kindly came to tell you." As expected, Pablo's pupils contracted. He checked his watch, stood up, and said coldly, "I have something to do. Stay if you want." But from the quickening of his steps, Juliet saw his panic. "Oh, right." Her blood felt like it was screaming through her veins, and her voice came out sharp and vicious. "Jane saw us kissing last night." She watched with satisfaction as Pablo's hand froze on the door handle. Every word she spoke was dripping with vicious delight. You didn't see her expression then. TSK. Such a pity. Chapter 8. Pablo drove straight home. All the way. Jane didn't answer his calls. When he opened the door, everything looked exactly the same as when he'd left that morning. The pillow Jane loved was still lying crookedly on the sofa in its usual silly way. Jane's clothes were still neatly folded in the closet. The heart pounding painfully in Pablo's chest finally began to calm down. But the next second, he saw something by the bedside table. It was their matching couple rings, and beneath the rings was a note. "We're done. I'm returning this to you." In his ear, the mechanical voice saying the number you dialed cannot be reached repeated again and again, like poisoned arrows, one after another, each one hitting Pablo's heart with perfect accuracy. At that moment, an unknown number called in, even when he'd signed his parents' death certificates, and learned that part of the family shares had been stolen by their trusted friends. Pablo had remained calm, but now, his hand trembled slightly. "Hello." His heart felt as if it were hanging high over a cliff, swaying in empty air, clinging to the last shred of hope. He asked, "Jane?" A polite, official voice answered, "Good evening, sir. We're calling from the Sunset restaurant you booked exclusively. It's now 1831. We notice neither you nor your girlfriend have arrived. Would you like to delay your proposal event?" His heart plummeted off the cliff, shattering into pieces. But Pablo didn't even have time to feel the heartbreak, because every day afterward, he had to deal non-stop with the desperate, final counterattacks from Juliet's father and grandfather. He had clearly already found out where Jane was, yet he couldn't go to her until the 29th day after their breakup, when the Martinez family's Martinez finally became Pablo's Martinez completely. Only then did he fly to the country where she was. Pablo gripped the couple ring Jane left behind. The metal dug painfully into his palm, and the pain spread tightly into his chest. He finally understood. The strange, indescribable sting in his heart was actually hurt. He thought Jane had gone a little too far this time. A lover's quarrel was one thing, but she actually left the country and abandoned him. Forget it. She loved him so much. She must have been furious after seeing him kiss Juliet, and that's why she acted like this. Pablo forced himself to ignore the uncharacteristic calm Jane had shown recently, and told himself again, as long as he coaxed her, she would definitely come back to him immediately. But on a foreign street, he saw her from afar, his Jane, kissing another man. Chapter 9. When Simon leaned in. I was completely stunned. A wave of warmth rushed from the spot where his cheek brushed mine, slid down my neck, and spread through my entire body. He quickly stepped back. I froze. Why did you suddenly do a cheek kiss? Sorry. You're just too cute. Simon looked down at me, his late green eyes shimmering like a sunlit ocean. I wanted to kiss your cheek, but I was afraid it might be too abrupt. Jane, I like you. Would you be my girlfriend? This time, I was truly shocked when coworkers winked and joked that the boss liked me. I never took it seriously. Simon was the general manager of our branch, half Russian, half Chinese, young, brilliant. His beauty was so striking it almost blurred gender. Like a merman from the deep sea, my private interaction with him had started when I stayed after work to practice speaking. Once, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep in the office. When I woke up, a comfortable thin blanket had been placed over me. When Simon didn't talk, he seemed stern. Working overtime is not advisable. Being scolded by a boss is always awkward. I had just opened my mouth to explain when I caught the playful glint. Like a child who had succeeded in a prank, in his eyes, in slightly broken Chinese, Simon said, "But hard work deserves reward. Jane, you teach me Chinese. I teach you Russian. How about that?" Honored and flattered, I had no reason to refuse. With his help, my speaking skills improved rapidly. Within 2 weeks of joining the new company, I secured a major deal. It even threatened someone else's promotion opportunity. That person tried to use my nationality as an excuse to rally people against me. In a meeting of over 100 people, Simon openly praised me and criticized him by name. It was clearly a warning to everyone that he was backing me up. My coworkers said they had never seen Simon go this far for anyone. Yet, Inappropriately. The only thought I had was, "Ah, so this is what it feels like to be someone like Juliet." After arriving in France, I rarely thought about Pablo, because I had long known my leaving would never affect him. No expectations means no disappointment. Besides, Pablo had always been unshakable, unaffected. There was no way he would show up in a foreign country like some dramatic CEO in the cliché romance films he despised. Jane. And at this moment, I watched the impossible happen. Pablo, face dark, walking quickly toward me, before I could even widen my eyes. He pulled me into a desperate embrace. His breathing was unsteady. Just now, I thought I saw. Simon's surprised voice came from the side. "President Pablo? You know Jane?" I was shocked too. Why did Simon know Pablo? Just as I was about to push Pablo away, he seemed to remember there was a third person present. He released me, but immediately pulled me to stand beside him. Pablo's tone was calm, yet his right arm wrapped around my shoulder like an iron wall, making it impossible for me to move. I forgot to introduce her earlier. Jane is my girlfriend. The amount of information in just a few minutes overloaded my brain like a crashing computer. I had no idea what Pablo was doing. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Let go of me. We already broke up." Simon's eyes narrowed at that. The look he gave Pablo was glacial. "Please release her, even though you are our client." Simon continued, "I must guarantee the safety of my employee. Otherwise." The two men were nearly the same height, both strikingly handsome, an extreme contrast, the sharp elegance of the East versus the refined dominance of the West. The air turned instantly explosive, the atmosphere on edge, ready to ignite. Pablo's expression turned entirely cold. And for reasons unknown, he was filled with hostility towards Simon, a company president suddenly giving an employee a cheek kiss. Pablo cut Simon off with a chilly laugh through his nose. "I don't find that to be very polite behavior." Chapter 10. I finally understood everything. Pablo was the true client behind the major deal I closed. A heavy wave of exhaustion rose from deep inside me. The immense sense of accomplishment I'd felt back then now felt like a giant slap across my face. Integrating into work and life in a foreign country is not easy at all, but people fall in love with themselves through overcoming difficulties again and again. And aside from that one big deal, the sum of all the other deals I made this month also placed me first in the department. I truly didn't understand why Pablo always had to show up at moments like this just to say, "Jane, admit it. Without me, you can't live well." I stopped struggling and said calmly, "Pablo, let go of me." I gave Simon a reassuring glance, then said to Pablo, "Let's sit down and talk." Chapter 11. A conversation long overdue finally came. Pablo pinched the bridge of his nose. His lashes were long, his deep-set eyes slightly tired. That night downstairs, Juliet kissed me too quickly. I didn't have time to dodge. It was just like when Simon quickly leaned toward you earlier. But this time you stayed mad for an awfully long time. And you acted decisively enough. "I'm sorry. Can you come home with me now?" Even now, Pablo still thought I was throwing a tantrum. My words caught at my lips, dissolving into a laugh of disbelief. "What happens between you and Juliet?" "I don't care anymore, Pablo. When I said we broke up, I meant it." By this point, I would never believe that Pablo came all the way here out of love for me. Most likely, he was simply used to being in control, and couldn't stand the idea that someone who always stayed behind him would disappear on her own. Perhaps my words were a response Pablo had never anticipated. His expression went blank, because I had always been the one who panicked first, surrendered first, and clung to him. That was what gave him his confidence. He opened his mouth, stunned. "Why?" In the past, I used to ask that same why hysterically, and Pablo always said there was nothing to explain. Now, walking all the way to this point, I suddenly understood why he had said that. "When you don't care, there's nothing to explain." Calmly, I said, "There's no reason. It doesn't matter anymore. Falling out of love, breaking up, it's normal." Pablo studied me for a long moment before speaking. "You're just still mad at me." His eyes darkened, full of certainty. "Break up? Huh? Then I'll just pursue you again." Chapter 12. I never knew Pablo had the ability to cling on like this. He had always cared about appearances. When had he ever done something so beneath his dignity? A proper party, a client actually requested to work in our office with us. He deliberately and calmly appeared in both my work and my life. I no longer thought his grand gestures were because he loved me so much. It was just pride. He simply couldn't accept being the one dumped. But that day, I passed by the pantry. I heard coworkers talking about me, saying how lucky I was, having two top-tier men pursuing me, and even betting on who I would end up with. Every coworker present bet on Simon, for many reasons. For example, Simon publicly stood up to a racist in front of hundreds of people for me. For example, someone saw me and Simon staying late alone in the office in an ambiguous atmosphere. For example, someone saw us going to watch a re-released Chinese movie together. A bang, the sound of a cup shattering against the floor. Like a magnet, it drew everyone's attention toward the other doorway of the pantry. And there stood Pablo. From afar, he met my eyes. The man who was always cold-blooded and strong now looked desolate and at a loss. Pablo used his identity as Party A this time to force me to have dinner with him. He clenched the glass tightly, his voice hoarse and dry. In the past year, I treated you badly, didn't I? Pablo's long lashes trembled slightly like butterfly wings. It was my mistake. I didn't handle my boundaries with the opposite sex well, but I've already fired Juliet. I didn't cheat. You can't sentence me to death just because of these things. Just like I knew. He paused slightly, his tone pretending to be relaxed. You and Simon don't really have anything, right? So it's true, there is no such thing as genuine empathy in this world. Only when one is truly standing alone in a snowstorm does one know how bone-piercing and unbearable it is. I observed his expression, and for the first time, I felt relieved, but I didn't want to drag Simon into anything between the two of us at all. I said, "It's not important." Not important? Again, not important? Then what is important to you? Pablo's voice rose, drawing many people in the cafe to look over. He had always been impeccable from head to toe. When had he ever lost his composure like this? His Adam's apple bobbed stiffly several times before he calmed himself down. Like a drowning man grabbing onto the last piece of driftwood, he took out the couple's rings I had refused to keep. Like a gambler placing his final chip on the negotiation table. You said before that we'd exchange these rings for wedding bands, and that it would always count. Let's go back and get married, okay? No one knew better than him how much I had wanted to marry him. One sentence about the company not allowing office romance, and that we couldn't go public yet. And I spent years as his underground, nameless girlfriend, waiting year after year. Back then, when that leader, who later turned out to be a sexual offender, targeted me at the company. I used to complain at home and grievance. When I become the boss's wife someday, I'm going to scare the company people, especially Luotian, out of their wits. My tone low and discouraged. Pablo, year after year. When exactly is this right time you keep talking about? But now, hearing the marriage proposal I had dreamed of, my heart didn't even ripple. I met his earnest gaze, took the ring, and stated calmly, on our 6th anniversary, I called you so many times. You didn't answer. Pablo said quickly. I slept in the office those days. Juliet brought things over. But we didn't. His explanation choked off abruptly, like a beast whose throat had been seized. Because I said lightly, that night, I was almost raped by Luotian. It was as if all the blood drained out of Pablo in an instant. His face turned deathly pale. His thin lips parted several times, like someone gravely wounded. He couldn't manage a single word. I said airily, fortunately, a passerby saved me. I suppose I'm kinder than Pablo ever was. All those times I was hysterical. He never bothered to give me even one explanation. But I'm tired now. I have my own life. I just want to make everything clear. So I said, actually, that night I really hated you. Hated your arrogance. Hated your indifference. But the more I hated, the more I realized what I really hated was the weak version of myself who stayed by your side. So this is how it feels, just moving one's lips and watching the other person fall apart because of you. But after coming all this way, in love there are no survivors, only mutual ruin. I laid myself bare, like slicing open my chest with a scalpel to expose my heart. Between us, the biggest obstacle was never Juliet. Pablo, Being with you exhausts me. You give me the feeling that without me, you could choose anyone. I worked desperately, tried desperately, lived in constant insecurity, until later, I finally realized that the recognition I desperately wanted shouldn't have come from you, but from myself. I used to think I couldn't live without you, but it turns out, without you, I'm doing even better. When my final word fell, Pablo just looked at me. He watched with grief and sorrow as I threw the ring out the window. In the end, he didn't say a single word. Chapter 13. After that conversation, Pablo never came to my company again. The last time I saw him was during the final acceptance of the project. Simon brought me as the Party B representative, while Pablo attended as Party A. Simon was a very gentlemanly person. After learning about my past with Pablo, he didn't force me to respond to his feelings quickly. Instead, he said he was willing to wait until I processed everything. In the car, silence filled the air. I sat in the passenger seat. Pablo sat in the back. Pablo lowered his eyes and didn't say a word. I had spelled everything out so clearly. Pablo was never one to wallow in misery. After this project ended, we probably would never see each other again in this lifetime. The winter in Country F that year was freezing. At night, a sudden blizzard began. My right eyelid started twitching nonstop. The accident happened in a split second. The tire skidded. Simon quickly turned right, but it was difficult to control the car. My whole body was slammed against the window. In the distance, a car sped toward us. Right before the collision, a cold yet familiar scent rushed toward me with strong, unwavering force. Pablo pulled my head tightly into his chest, and something pressed against me through a layer of fabric. I suddenly realized it was a ring, the ring I had thrown away. At the very last moment, Pablo said, "Jane, I'm sorry." Chapter 14. When I opened my eyes again, Pablo was still in the ICU undergoing emergency treatment. My left hand was fractured. Simon had performed the best possible self-rescue maneuver and was the least injured among the three of us. He came to see me, looking ashamed. I didn't blame him. After all, in a situation like that, self-preservation is a human being's first instinct. Only a madman's first reaction would be to risk their own life to save someone else. I sat blankly at the entrance of the ICU. The first people to arrive were the 5 lawyers who had rushed over from abroad. They asked me to sign a stack of documents. I couldn't understand most of the text. The only 2 lines I understood said, "As long as Pablo dies or loses the ability to act, all assets would unconditionally go to Jane, and even Pablo himself would have no right to take them back." I covered my face and finally broke down in tears. At the edge of life and death, he used his life to say he loved me, then told me he was sorry. I truly couldn't understand. How could a person love someone and still hurt them from such a high, unreachable place? One of the lawyers, the oldest of them, who had watched Pablo grow up since childhood, told me what had happened, then let out a deep sigh. "Juliet's father is cunning. Pablo only dealt with Juliet because he had no choice. Pablo has been strong-willed since he was young. Perhaps that's why he'd rather let you misunderstand that he cheated than tell you the truth. To him, exposing his vulnerable side in front of you is no different from dying." Chapter 15. The stitches on my left hand had been removed, yet Pablo still hadn't woken up. I went to the Sunset restaurant. When the sun began to set, someone at the next table was proposing. Cheerful coaxing and encouragement filled the restaurant. Blushing under everyone's good-natured teasing, the girl accepted the ring. The 2 of them left the restaurant satisfied and glowing with joy. As the waiter cleared the tableware, he sighed. There was a super handsome guy last time who booked the entire restaurant. He checked every detail of the process, every ceremony, even the humidity. But in the end, both he and his girlfriend didn't show up. I wonder what kind of sad story that was. The sun went down. Only the afterglow remained. As I watched, somehow that soft light stung my eyes, and tears fell silently. I couldn't deny it. In this world, aside from Pablo, no one else could ever bring me such extreme love and such extreme hurt. When I returned to the hospital room, it was already night. Pablo was still lying there quietly, his features sharp and handsome, as if carved by a blade, just like how he used to lie beside me every night. As if in the next second, he would open those eyes that made me love and hate him. Look at me. Kiss me softly. I parted my lips. I've thought it over. I don't accept your I'm sorry. You did have your difficulties, that's true. But the harm you caused me is also true. Pablo, we can't go back. A gust of wind blew outside the window. And I whispered, but the future remains to be seen. Pablo extra. Pablo had a very long dream. The first thing he saw was 19-year-old Jane. Back then, the department was recruiting newcomers. He was the department head, and she was a new member. Everyone went to eat Western food together. She ordered a medium-well steak. Someone mocked her without restraint. Her skin was fair, and that flush spread from the base of her ears to her slender neck, then disappeared under the collar of her white shirt. Even in such shame, she somehow managed to smile calmly and confess in front of everyone. Sorry, my family isn't well off. I've never had Western food before. Later, this girl who had never eaten steak, who would twist her ankle even just wearing kitten heels, walked steadily in high heels through a bizarre city, achieving one victory after another, like a tiny boat, small, yet full of resilience, never admitting defeat. Pablo loved and ached for her rare sincerity and tenacity, so he turned himself into a safe harbor, using meticulous care to let her anchor with peace of mind, never needing to take risks. But as time passed, he became like the kind of man in an 8 o'clock melodrama who marries the woman he loves. The heart that vowed to protect her for a lifetime so she would never need to be strong was real. But the arrogance and condescension born when the other person truly relied on him and reached out for love were also real. He began forgetting that Jane had always been someone who could fight side by side with him. He thought himself noble for silently bearing his family's pressure, supposedly paving the way for a safe and happy future for both of them. Yet he forgot that the future is made up of every single present moment. He overlooked Jane's anguish, her insecurity. He allowed her to gradually wither and fade. A boat docked in the harbor is the safest, but that is not why boats are built. As a harbor, his existence should have told the adventurous little boat, wherever you go, there will always be a place where you can return and rest safely. But instead, he mistakenly prevented the little boat from exploring, even made her lose confidence, believing she was not worthy, not precious. He loved her, but used the wrong way to love. Pablo prayed to God over and over again. He wanted to go back to the past. God regretfully told him that the past could not be returned to. But his God said, the future remains to be seen. Pablo slowly opened his eyes. He thought, if Jane forgives him, that would be best. If Jane doesn't forgive him, that is also good. This time, he would respect her choice unconditionally.